Hey, what's going on, guys? Pete here with MixBetterNow.com and LearningToMix.com, and I've got a brand new Mix 101 video for you today. We're going to be checking out how to use a Fairchild compressor. All right, so we are working inside of Studio One here. This is the Session Stella song from Zach Jones and the Tricky Bits. Please go check them out, zachjonesandthetrickybits.com. So on the screen, Fairchild 670. On the right, Fairchild 660. I'm going to get in and show you all the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes of these tools, what they do and how they work. But first, let's go ahead and listen to what we got going on here. I'm going to play this from the third verse going into the end of the tune here. I have the 670 on the drum bus, so all the drums are going into this compressor. And then I'm using the 660 on Zach's lead vocal. So just pay attention to how they're both sort of reacting and how they sound. And let's take a listen.
So don't let me say it, Stella dear. The words are on my lips, but don't you bend an ear until the day it starts to ring in with the melody that I've been singing. Then I can say it, Stella Blue. Then I can say that I love you.
Okay, so let's talk about essentially the main features of this plugin, which of course is an emulation of the wonderful original piece of kit from the 50s, the original Fairchild compressor limiter, one of what's considered the Holy Trinity, the other two being the 1176 and the LA2A. For me, with those three compressors, I can essentially mix any record or make any record that I need to make with any type of music. They're all incredible in their own way, but this is a Vari-Mu compressor, so this is in fact different to the LA2A that we've looked at and the 1176 that we've taken a look at. Just quickly in summation, there's four main types of compression. We have VCA style compression, which we've yet to look at, but that would be something along the lines of an SSL compressor, okay? A FET compressor would be like an 1176. An optical compressor would be the LA2A, and then this is what they call a Vari-Mu style of compressor. Now, I'm not here to do a compression overview or a history of compression. This isn't what this is really about. I would like to show you these controls so that way you can feel very comfortable getting up and running, on a Fairchild. Now, as you guys have probably seen, I use the UAD Fairchilds, but look, this is not a video about what's the best plugin, who makes this or that, okay? These are faithful emulations of the hardware, so I want to show you how to essentially be comfortable with navigating your way around these plugins so that you can use them in your sessions. All right, so the way that I see it is there are three main functions to getting these guys up and running. Let me just get the 660 out of the way for now. We'll focus on the 670. Now the 660 is basically one channel of the 670. So the 670 is a stereo compressor limiter, and the analog 660 was a mono version of that, a mono channel. So let's drop down the drums here. We're gonna solo these up. So as I said, this is on the drum bus right now, and if we just pay attention, let me move this marker, pay attention to the VU meter and the way it is reacting. So we're not doing an insane amount of compression. We're just knocking off, I don't know, 1 to 3 dB. But the way that we get our compression is by using these three main controls right here, okay? Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about some of the features on the plugin that are indigenous only to the plugin, because some of them are different from what's on the original unit. But these are, the main tools up here, if you will, the main controls that allow us to dial in our compression. So I'm going to zero this out right now. I'm just going to go back to the default setting. So as you can see from there, there's no compression happening on the VU meter. Just to touch on real quick, this is set to gain reduction. We can also set the meter to display the amount of input gain or output gain, but I usually just always leave it on the gain reduction. So the first thing that I like to deal with here is this input gain, okay? So as you can see, this is stereo linked right now. Both sides of the compressor are moving at the same time to one another. Now we can unlink this if we want, so we can run it in multi-mono with these two link controls down here, but I typically leave it in stereo all the time. So the Fairchild is known to have a ton of tubes and transformers in it. It has, I believe, 20 tubes and 14 transformers in the original analog units, which makes this a very colorful, a very specific sounding compressor. It is not a transparent compressor. You will reach for this because you want that Fairchild sound. So the input gain is actually, if you look in the circuit, it is before the tube section. So all you need to know about that is the harder we drive the input gain, the more color we're going to get to the signal, okay? So if we have the threshold all the way off, listen to how this changes based upon how much level I drive here with the input gain, okay? So more towards 20 here, we're really not going to hear much. And then if you really crank it up towards 0, you're going to hear a lot of those tubes and transformers. So the harder you hit it, the more gooey it gets, the more weight. It's a little bit spongy. You know I hate using those buzzwords, but it's true. I mean, it's a warm, fat, gooey sounding compressor. So first thing we do is we dictate how much level we want to push into the unit with this input gain here, okay? So I'm going to leave this around 8 right now. So the next thing you're going to see here is a control you're familiar with, which is the threshold. So the way that we dictate how much compression we want to occur is by increasing or decreasing the threshold, however you want to look at it here. This goes from 0 to 10, so technically it's kind of like the opposite of lowering the threshold, but just know that if you turn this clockwise, you're going to get more compression, okay? Check it out. Okay, so as you can see, the harder I pushed it, or the further I should say I pushed it to the right, the more compression that we had here. Now these two, they play off one another. So the harder you drive the input gain, the less you need to push the threshold up to set the compressor into motion, to actually go into compression, okay? So for example, if I back this off on the left, I'm gonna have to really push the threshold up to get some compression happening here. Now I have the threshold maxed, so if I start to increase the input gain, watch how much compression happens here as we turn this knob. Okay, so those are, I would say, the two main controls for setting up how much compression you want to do with this unit. Now, the next thing that's very, very important here is our time constant, okay? So this is a little bit confusing. I know it confused me when I was first introduced to the Fairchild. We're going to see 6 numbers here, right? 1 through 6. What does that mean? How does that apply to what we're doing? Well, each one of these numbers stands for an attack and release time, but they're a fixed attack and release time. 5 and 6 actually vary a little bit here. But just so you know, I typically will use 1 or 6 because it has the fastest attack and release times. We're going to get real nerdy for 1 second. I figured I'll just show you this chart very quickly so it'll make sense to you as to what these what these are 1 through 6. So position 1, 200 microseconds for the attack time, and the release time is 300 milliseconds, okay? So now this is something important to realize here, because if we look at the release time and we go all the way down, we're gonna notice that the fastest release time on this compressor is 300 milliseconds. Now, I would say 300 milliseconds for me is like a medium release time, so it's not a super fast release. If you need a compressor with a very fast release on it, you know, think 1176, think 50 milliseconds, or think 100 milliseconds. So if you need that, then, you know, maybe the Fairchild isn't what you need to use in that situation or that circumstance. Just so you know, 1,000 microseconds are equivalent to 1 millisecond, okay? Just as 1,000 milliseconds are equivalent to 1 second. So the microseconds are just the next step down in terms of the, you know, that 1,000-second sort of setup, that mathematical setup. So as you look here, I mean, 3 and 4 are pretty tough because, I mean, you've got very slow release times, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. So, I mean, I pretty much never use those. I like position 6 because we get a slightly slower attack time in the 400 microseconds, or, you know, also known as 0.4 milliseconds, okay? And, you know, we've got 300 milliseconds for transients on the release. See, this is where it's program dependent, so it'll change based upon what it is actually releasing, or what audio source you're compressing, okay? And this is how you'll know what all the different time constants are. And if you're gonna be using the Fairchild a lot, then I would just, until you sort of get familiar with it, I would just make a little sticky note somewhere, or just write it down on a pad of paper, just so that you can quickly reference it and you'll know what your attack and release times are. All right, so very quick, I'm gonna go through the different time constants here, and I want you to watch the meter in terms of gain reduction. I want you to just see how it reacts, okay? For example, on 1, you're gonna see a very fast attack and a fast release, and then on 3 and 4, you're gonna see it get much, much slower on the release, where it probably isn't going to return to 0 or attempt to return to 0. Check it out. So pretty extreme difference there. Again, the reason I like to use 1 and 6 is because I like that faster release time. I pretty much never use a 2 or a 5 second release on anything that I compress. So it's sort of it is program dependent in the fact that it depends on what you're compressing as to you know, what setting you'll need to use. But as I say, guys, usually 1 and 6 will get the job done for me, and I'm sure it will get the job done for you. All right, so let's just have a quick look at the rest of some of these features that are on this plugin here. Now, again, this varies plugin to plugin, so all I can do is show you what I have in front of me. This is the only Fairchild plugin that I own. But on the UAD one here, we have a HR stands for headroom, so we can lower and raise the headroom depending on sort of how gritty or how clean we want the signal to be. We have a balance control over here. If we go at the bottom here, we have a sidechain filter, so we could let through some of the low end information. You know, for example, if we want more of the kick and the bass to get through, we can increase this knob here and allow that to do so. As you guys know, low end information sends compressors into compression a whole lot quicker, and it stimulates them a whole lot more than any other area of the EQ frequency range. Again, we can link and unlink our controls here, so we can unlink the controls, and we can also unlink the sidechain, which is really cool. Here is our makeup knob. Okay, so you know, you can level match or you can increase some of the gain here. And then one of my favorite things about this particular plugin is we have a mix knob here, which is a very common feature on most plugins today. So with the mix knob, you know, you can actually have it on a track and use it in parallel. You could really, you know, compress the junk out of one of the tracks, and then you can just use the old mix knob here and blend the taste. One last feature that I think is very fascinating about this compressor is it defaults to what's called left-right, which is basically stereo, but you're also going to see this lat-vert setting here. Now, what this stands for is lateral and vertical, okay? Lateral, vertical. And this is really the birth of mid-side processing. So you can set this to lat-vert, and as you'll see up here, this channel will take care of the lateral, which is going to be the side information. And down here, you're going to have the vertical, which is the mid information. So you can essentially compress in mid-side mode with this unit. So that's sort of what made it very revolutionary back in the day, was that in the 50s, you know, here you have, I forget the name of the guy who invented this. Hang on, I wrote it down for you guys. I totally did. His name is Rain Norma, but the one thing that I remember about this that makes it so cool is Les Paul played a major part in developing this compressor with this guy Rain, who was a sort of a master at working with radios and televisions, which is where a lot of this technology comes from. So just a very, very cool thing, and this would have been super, super futuristic, you know, back in the 50s. Okay, one last thing I want to show you guys here is that I have this on Zach's lead vocal, but this is the 660. Okay, so in the hardware, you know, in the analog world, a 660 would be mono only, and a 670 would be stereo. But here in the you know, in the plug-in world, we can use a 660, which is technically the mono version, on a stereo source, and we can also use a 670 on a mono source. Okay, so it really doesn't matter, but you have a lot of the same controls. It's just essentially one channel of the Fairchild 670. So if you just chop the 670 in half, you would sort of get this 660 here. And I love to use this on vocals and bass. This is probably like my two favorite things for the 660. 670 is great on, like I said, on the drum bus. It's amazing in parallel compression for drums. I love it there. And once in a blue moon, I'll use it on the mix bus. So I just wanted to show you how this sounds on Zach's vocal here. Just so you know, this is running after an 1176. So I'm doing a little bit of serial compression. The 1176 is taking care of some of the peaks, and then the Fairchild here is just doing some of the smoothing. Check it out.
Don't let me linger when we touch. Don't let me light your cigarette and make you blush. Don't pour that second glass of wine. Don't let our fingers intertwine. Don't let me linger when we touch.
Okay, so in this specific instance, I'm doing about 1 to 2 dB of compression after the 1176, and I just really like the way that it sounds. I love the way it compresses. And another little trick that a lot of guys do is they will just put a Fairchild on a track and just pass audio through it and not do any compression, because of the way it sounds. The lovely warmth it gives you from modeling all those tubes and transformers is just pleasing to a lot of guys. All right, guys, so this has been an overview video of how to use a Fairchild compressor. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Look, I use the Fairchild all over my mixes, and it serves me very well. It has a very specific sound and a very specific function, so it's a tool that I will reach for, you know, like I said, on vocals, bass, drums, things like that, you know, and I find that it serves me well, especially in conjunction with other things like 1176s and LA2As. All right, so as always, guys, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. If you have yet to head over to mixbetternow.com and to jump on our email list, I will send you my free audio swag bag, which is full of all kinds of goodies like free multi-track sessions, free mix templates, free drum samples, all kinds of cool stuff like that. And then finally, please head over to learningtomix.com and check out our new monthly mixing membership site. It's a blast. There's all the infos over there, so make sure you check it out. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.